Harrington Commodore, Parsons Commodore, Stack Commodore. Fourth row is Keogh and Harrop. Fifth row, Benson Brown. Wilmington is missing, blew an engine yesterday and has gone home. Andrew Harris. Then Wilson, Parmenter and White. Graham Treasure and Manson down at the tail end of a 17-car grid. All in readiness. Great tension here on a very fine day and a big crowd. As they blast away, Fury getting a bit sideways and not getting away very well, but Brock jumps beautifully. And it's Brock from Moffat. And look at the gap, though, that a good start has given Brock on the remainder of the field.
Here comes
Johnson
Grice.
now, sorry, Grice it is, barging his way through. Fury fourth, Harrington sixth. That's Cullen 22, outside Parsons 50.
It's Brock from Moffat. Grice, Fury. Steve Harrington in fifth position.
Well,
Harrington was smoking badly when he came onto the bowl as well. Right behind him is David Parsons.
Moffat has nothing to complain about with that electrifying start, slotting him into second place ahead of all but one of the cars that should be able to leave him off early in the race down the straight. Fury, the series leader, will be a little bit more disappointed.
There goes Grice, past Moffat.
And talking to Alan Grice in the form-up area earlier, I said, you will mix it with them, won't you, and make life uncomfortable for the little ones? And he said, oh, all right, with a grin all over his face. He loves the scrap. David Parsons in car number 50 has come to a halt. Very bad luck for a man. He's banged the back of it very hard, as you can see there. And very bad luck, because the Tasmanian private here has very little money to spare and so far has done very well in the series. A 59.82 and about a second and a bit quicker than that, the second lap for Brock. 59.82 is his standing lap. So Brock in the position that he and Grice must assert on the little cars, which running softer compound Dunlop tyres with better grip, but also putting much less heat into them through the race, will be in better condition by the end of 40 laps. This is the longest of all the touring car rounds so far, 96.5 kilometres. All the others have been just around the minimum required of 80.
Steve Harrington moves up to the fifth position, and behind him Dick Johnson in the first of the Ford Falcons. Brock now extending his lead off the bowl, working hard to keep the pressure off his tyres, because the tyres have to last in good condition for 40 laps. And Brock knows just how difficult that is in the heat of Adelaide International Raceway.
58.5, that lap for Brock. Moffat, though, Grice at least, with pressure on him from both Moffat and Fury.
58.5, of course, is 0.5 of a second under Brock's existing lap record, so that's the pace of the race.
On full tanks. There is no
way all the way through Grice.
There's no suggestion of the tactic employed by Moffat last weekend of an electrifying pit stop. No need for it, nor does the pit arrangement at Adelaide Raceway suit it. So we do not expect to see that again.
Nonetheless, the Peter Stuyvesant Moffat team have judged their fuel load so keenly that they estimate they'll finish with about 1 litre of fuel left in the tank.
Harrington, Dick Johnson, 5th and 6th. Cullen in 22. The car qualified yesterday by Ron Harrop, 10th grid position. Johnson bucking around in the big Ford that got a great cheer from the crowd when he brought it out onto the grid. He and that car really invoked more devotion from the fans than most other brands. Brock, Grice, Moffat, Fury. Onto the bowl for the 5th time. 35 laps remaining.
Fury trying now on Moffat.
And I would think he might just, no. A wily Moffat saw that, but that's interesting, isn't it? Moffat a 57.4 in practices. Fury worked much harder and longer to do a 57.8. But having a real probe at Alan Moffat.
Peter Brock 1.18 seconds in front of the great scrap for second position between Grice, Moffat and Fury, and this circuit of all of them really suiting the smaller cars of Alan Moffat and George Fury, if only they can get a clean run.
Peter Brock coming up the lap. Tail ender in a Capri already, a 1.3 second lead over Grice, who's pulling out to about 6/10 on Moffat, and a whisker or a blink of an eye on Fury. And they come by the very slow car 48, the Isuzu of Jeff Manson, which frankly at the pace he's going, being lapped after 6 laps, has very little place in the race.
Moffat having to work really hard to try and shake Fury off his tail, and Fury ducks to the outside, won't do it under brakes, but Moffat is in real jeopardy from Fury. The gap, first to fourth position, is 2.21 seconds.
This the scrap behind the 2 Commodores of Brock and Grice.
The news through, as we obviously can see from the pace of this race, that all 4 cars dicing for the lead have all broken Peter Brock's lap record.
And of course the one in 3rd place, Alan Moffat, took his first pole position in the 5 rounds of this year's Touring Car Championship here yesterday. Pole had previously been taken twice by Grice, twice by Brock. But Moffat, what he has done, has won several races.
First car into the pits is Steve Harrington, the 22-year-old, just turned 22 in fact on Friday. Number 2 driver in the STP Roadways team. He's been locking up a front left-hand wheel coming onto the bowl, and Harrington obviously learning his trade at this stage and not prepared to stay out there for another 33 laps without having the problem rectified.
Moffat, of course, won the first round and the last round, Calder and Wanneroo, and he has taken lap records at Sandown, Simmons Plains and Wanneroo. The outright touring car lap record at each of those circuits, as Moffat presses Grice, lies to that man in car 43, probing his way on a Commodore, which in the first 3 rounds was more than the equal of Peter Brock, but is not that at this moment today.
Brock extends his lead to 2.06 seconds.
John White, car 65, about to be lapped by Brock. The car sort of 8 seconds slower than Brock's best practice time. Good stuff, great pressure from Moffat, who knows the value of doing that, particularly after last weekend when Peter Brock just went too deep and too late, braking at the tight switchback corner at the top of the hill at Wanneroo and spun. And on the other hand, Fury knows the benefit too of sitting in behind a person as experienced in touring cars as Alan Moffat.
Now Moffat up alongside Grice.
Brock, you saw him get onto the picks there as the car
And it's Moffat
down a bit.
Grice re-challenging. Oh, touched him. Moffat
hit.
all over the track.
And Grice
And here comes Cheeky Fury looking for a way through.
Grice getting ready to do a real pedal bending argument here. And saw some determination there, particularly the car in front has little to lose. He knows he'd be worse off at the end than the car he's battling against. And I don't think if Alan Moffat wants to play rough, and I'm not suggesting he was, but if he wanted to continue that, then I think Alan Grice would be very happy to do so.
1/4 distance now for Peter Brock, 10 laps down, 30 remaining. As Alan Moffat again ranges alongside Grice down the chute. And this time under brakes it'll be the same thing again.
Fury was saying he was actually laughing for about 2 or 3 laps at Wanneroo as he watched Brock and Moffat wring each other's necks. And the persistent Alan Grice, about 1 minute later, reckons he's just about solved the problem of Alan Grice. And George Fury now starts to think about his dealing with Grice. There's the twice Australian rally champion with only 2 years in road racing, and what a tremendous job he's done. And so too is his mentor, Howard Marsden, who runs the Nissan team. Peter Brock running down the straight and being watched very keenly in the pits by his pit manager, John Harvey, himself a winner of numerous Australian titles, and who will be signalling to him throughout this stage and helping him decide tactics. Here he is with Drew Morford.
Well, a very interested John Harvey. Gee, Peter got a great start, didn't he?
Well, that was an exceptionally good start, probably one of the best he's done.
Now, he hasn't gone too well this year. 2 failed to finish. Why all of a sudden the improvement?
Well, we, after the Simmons Plains race, spent a lot of time developing and testing the car at Calder, knowing that we had both Perth and Adelaide to do, a long way away from home base, and that's obviously paid off because the car's performing very well.
Is there a plan today, or is it just get out in front and keep going?
Well, the plan is to stay out in front as long as he can. The biggest problem that faces us, as faces other Commodore or even Falcon drivers, is the fact that the rear tyre performance will deteriorate as the race progresses. The plan was to build up as big a lead as possible early in the race, if that was possible. It's worked out that way, and I see now that Alan Grice and Alan Moffat are having a dice, which is probably slowing Alan Moffat up somewhat and allowing us to gain a bit of ground. So at this point in the race, it's worked out fine for us. We just hope we can make it to the end.
Whose future in the race may not be very long, as he just puffed a bit of smoke there as he got on the gas for the reverse camber. Peter Brock with some curious signals to his pit that we couldn't work out. On the previous lap, he lapped at the same time. Manson's car, number 48, Roger Manson, Jeff Manson, for a second time, which really doesn't make sense.
4.53 seconds the gap. Peter Brock back to this scrapping trio for second position. And certainly, as John Harvey said, this dice is slowing these 3 drivers up and giving Peter Brock the break he needs, so desperately needs, to be able to win a round of the Australian Touring Car Championship.
Fury's starting to be alarmed by it too. He doesn't want to finish 4th. That's been his worst result in the championship so far at Sandown. But he had a second at Calder, a 3rd at Simmons Plains, and then at Wanneroo, a 2nd. 0.5 of a second blanket these 3 cars.
Brock opens his lead to 5.16 seconds, 0.6 of a second on that lap, as now Moffat slingshots off the bowl, and this slower car, the Andrew Harris car in front, the Ford Falcon, could be a deciding factor in the braking area.
Which Grice realises that he's edging his way to the right. But Moffat's got him, and he won that argument well. Grice was all ready to turn hard right in front of him, and suddenly realised it would have been disastrous. Andrew Harris, big Falcon, the ex-Alan Jones car, travelling fairly slowly. Grice Grice goes low on the banking, Moffat stays high, and Grice made some ground as he did so. But whether he can translate that as the gap over these three splits to 1.2 now. That's the race order, with Fury fourth. Range of gauges in George Fury's car, which locks a left rear there, but Grice can't tag Moffat any longer, so Fury will start to think about it.
And Moffat starts to pull back Brock now from 5.16 2 laps ago. The gap is down to 4.79.
Yes, the gauge is in Fury's car. He has differential engine and transmission temperature gauges, exhaust gas temperature, which is quite critical in the car, and believe it or not, that gauge will read to over 1,000 degrees Celsius, with 960 being the critical quantity. If it gets to that level, then Fury has either to slow or to richen the mixture up slightly. He's got the ability to do that with a knob in the compartment and just lower exhaust temperatures, because it's, as he locks again, that it's that exhaust temperature that's a real problem to the turbo in the Bluebird engine. Spinning at 100,000 revs a minute with enormous temperatures passing over the little turbine blades that are spun up by the exhaust gases, turning another turbine that brings the mixture into the engine under pressure, therefore giving it much greater performance than a normal 1.8 litre four-cylinder motor. Grice back with Moffat. How did he do it? Fury running to the outside and delighted to see them scrapping, but Fury with his own problems. And he's got Moffat. That was three abreast, and I don't know how any of them did it, and Fury loved it. Brilliant stuff. And that is a continuing turn, that section of track. Well done, everybody. Clean, hard racing, and good stuff, the rally driver. Now lying second. Oh. Had to gain our breath a little bit on that one. Grice sort of probably still thinking to himself, what did I do wrong? I had Moffat there. And pit crews will now be rather surprised when they see this order. And Fury will be very keen. Let's have a look at it. Look at it. Moffat was leading the front, locked up, went wide, Grice underneath. Grice then got crossed up trying to stay off him. That was what gave Fury his chance. He came right across Moffat's bows, could not help it, wasn't intentional. Moffat tried to get right of him and down the clean inside run, but Fury said, I'm there. Next time you're in close company, a metre or two from cars in traffic at 50 or 60 kilometres an hour, and you think you're close, just think back to that situation at very high speed indeed. But Fury, with a brake locking problem, it hasn't been common to the car, but will not please him at this stage. The gap from Brock to Fury is 5.4 seconds. Moffat a little way behind, and his team manager, Alan Horsley, is down with Drew Morford.
You got a little bit behind Peter Brock, and now also George Fury's got you. Is it going to plan for you?
It's not exactly going to plan, but as the tank lightens off, I think we'll move up closer to them. Peter may be a little far away, but I think we can get the Datsun.
Yeah, well, Brock made an amazing start. Did that surprise you?
Oh, no, Peter's a professional, and he can always get off the line well.
And Alan Moffat so often comes from behind to win it. That was always going to be a plan? Just went a little bit...
Well, yes, we're not making a pit stop. but when that tank lightens off, you know, we'll start increasing our lap speeds.
All right. I know you're a bit nervy in the pits, so I'll let you go back.
Thanks very much.
Half distance, and Peter Brock holds a 5.41 second lead over George Fury as Alan Moffat comes down the outside now, challenging at the end of the main straight.
Goes to second. Fury third. Grice fourth. So Commodore's 1 and 4. Mazda second. Nissan Bluebird third. And behind that collection is Dick Johnson, the Falcon 17, and then the Harrop Cullen Commodore number 22, sixth, followed then in 38 by Bernie Stack Commodore.
And again, that smoke from Fury's car, he is really punishing the tyres on the left-hand side of his vehicle, and it could have dire consequences for him later in the race.
I think he's got the brake balance a little bit more inclined as he goes wide and tempts Alan Grice and comes in very late on the banking just to hold Grice out. He's got the brake balance too much to the rear, a little bit like he might like to have it in rallies to help get the tail of the car out. And in fact, Howard Marsden was telling me yesterday, George Fury used to drive his rally car and set it up with more oversteer than any other car as Grice goes back to third, question mark, and he does. And Fury, no, Grice will hold him, taking the inside to the next corner. If it had been a right-hander, Fury would have had him. So, plenty of mixing there, and Grice far from tired of arguing. The series leader having to get into this argument too. He's been able to stay out of a lot of the intense dicing, Fury, by dint of consistency. He's one of only 2 people to have finished all rounds and the only car driver combination to have done the full lap distance of every race. And so with the point scores, points that he's been getting, plus the fact that he gets more points in running it as an under 3 litre car than any of the cars against which he's scrapping at the moment, he hasn't had to argue too hard. But now, for instance, if Alan Moffat were able to attack Peter Brock, then you'd see a situation where Moffat first would get 25 and Fury, let's say third, would get 24 or less if he came further back. So suddenly he's in a position of dropping points to Moffat, which he hasn't previously been in the series. And so he has to keep a keen eye on Moffat's position in the field as well as his own. In the 8 rounds, they drop 1. Fury at the moment has 99 points. His worst finish, 21 from 4th at Sandown. There's the situation. Alan Moffat running second with 73. If Fury were to count only 3 rounds, as all the drivers below are doing, bar Harrington actually, Harrington's the other one that's had 4 finishes, then he would be on 78 points, only 5 in front of Moffat. And if Moffat picks up a point or 2 this one, well, then it gets even closer. And that's a much widening gap between Moffat second, Grice third, Fury fourth, and the race leader, Peter Brock, whose lead over Moffat now in second place is nearly 5 seconds, but it's decreasing. It's about 4.9, so Moffat's hauled in about half a second despite all the frenzy of that scrap with Grice and Fury.
3.43, the gap. Brock back to Moffat, so the gap opens as Moffat wends his way through the lap traffic, and as Brock obviously responds to the challenge.
12 laps to the finish, but before that, will we see a replay as we watch Dick Johnson of the dramatic final lap at Wanneroo only a week ago?
Johnson in 5th position. And while the race is fast and furious on the track, the lobbying off the track this weekend has been equally pacey as drivers have pushed the Confederation of Australian Motorsports for relaxations of the rules to allow them to gain advantage over each other, and John Keefe, the executive director of CAMS, has tried to show the wisdom of Solomon by offering opportunities to each of the drivers which will keep the field closely packed. Peter Brock, for example, desperately wants 12-inch wide rear tyres on the back of his car, wheels rather, on the back of his car. At the moment he's allowed only 10s. His rear tyres do go off very quickly on 10-inch wheels, and he feels that the 12-inch wheels will really make a difference. Alan Moffat wants a more powerful engine. George Fury wants a better built turbocharger that will allow him greater reliability, although he doesn't really seem to have a reliability problem to date.
The situation with the Commodores and Falcons is they're running not just at their 10-inch rear wheels, but that they're the same width as the rear wheels on the 20% lighter Bluebirds and Mazda RX-7s. Two seconds now, the gap. That man to the pursuer, the hunter, Alan Moffat.
"30 laps down, 10 to go. Peter Brock in the lead, but tenuously from Alan Moffat, with Grice in a frustrating third position. Grice is a man who loves to make his break from the start, and he's let first Brock and then Moffat get away from him. Moffat now locking wheels, as you can see, as he comes so close to Peter Brock.
So it's Commodore battles Mazda. He gets ever closer. Brock against Moffat, and appropriately Cigarette Company against Cigarette Company.
0.98 of a second, and you can put the watches away from here on in, because it's a case of visual distance. And alongside, giving Peter Brock very little opportunity to get over, although Brock tries, and by giving Moffat that small nudge, serves notice on him.
This was the point that Moffat was making to me yesterday when I said, with the sort of lap time you've got, you should be able to run away from them. He said, down that straight, they are so much quicker than I am that it's very hard for me to do much at in the other areas, particularly if they hold me up when I run onto the straight, the area where I need some help. And if they knock my lap time down in the sections that suit me, then I won't be anywhere near my lap time.
.91 seconds, the gap from these two back to Alan Grice, then 3.98 seconds back to George Fury. And like a Formula V race, all over the track now as Brock tries to break Moffat out of his slipstream. Moffat higher and will go for the slingshot through the corner. Brock hard braking there, trying to force Moffat off his tail. That was deliberate. Fastest lap so far, 58.1 seconds to Peter Brock, 0.9 of a second under his lap record. Six laps at the end of this lap remaining. There's Harvey, John Harvey, the Marlborough Holden dealer team manager and driver of the number 2 car in the long distance races later this year, and this time Moffat again pulls out of the slipstream and covers Brock down the straight this time, and Brock doesn't have an answer. Yes, he does.
situation as they lie in the point score at the moment, or in the order on the track at the moment, would have Fury 120 points, Moffat 96 if he finishes where he is now, 98 if he comes forward one spot, Johnson 70, Grice 70, and Brock, if he finishes where he is at the moment, 57. Now, if Fury then drops his worst score, because he can't count all, then he takes 21 off and he comes back to 99. So if Moffat wins this, and Fury stays where he is and Brock finishes ahead of Fury, there would be 1 point dropping to one of Fury's round between Moffat and Fury. But Fury's still in the lead.
5 laps remaining.
Five laps, 5 minutes, 12 kilometres, 150 kilometres an hour average speed. 2 very determined and capable racing drivers. 6 wins at Bathurst for Brock, 4 for Moffat, 5 Australian Touring Car Championships. For Moffat, the man who started racing in a TR2 Triumph sports car. Peter Brock in a supercharged Austin A35 with a Holden engine. Modest beginnings for both. But now, big business. Professional driving. 4 remaining when they run off the bowl. Surely Brock won't make the error he made at Wanneroo.
Warren Cullen is the driver in front in the Holden Commodore. They should reach him about the braking area, maybe just a little bit later in the corner.
Peter Brock, 5 litres, 390 horsepower, 1,232 kilos of motor car to fling around and keep under control. Alan Moffat, 1,002 kilos, 270 horsepower, a little twin-chamber engine that revs at up to 10,000 revs, to a design by Mr. Felix Wankel. Can actually be, if you don't unsettle the car too much there, can be quite a bit of a help onto the line. Just kicking it across towards the other apex, and that is almost an S-bend. 3 laps remain.
Moffat this time really going for the slingshot, has gone so high on the bowl and slams down onto the main straight.
Coming up to car 22, Harrop Cullen Commodore. Brock surges away. Brock with very disappointing results so far in the series. Qualified pole at Sandown at Wanneroo. 2nd at Sandown. But then 9th at Wanneroo. Retired from both Simmons Plains and Calder. So a measly 32 points at this moment. Fairly desperate time now for Alan Moffat, a time that at Sandown, when he was doing it on Alan Grice, he stretched the car so hard it broke an axle 4 laps from the end. This circuit's not like that. It's pretty smooth. But he's got to pull a bit of magic now, and as Brock got himself boxed there, but the camera, as you can see, was shortening it greatly, and Brock's got it well covered there. Coming up to pass the car in 6th position. You can believe that. They're on their 39th. They've been racing for 38 minutes, 10 seconds.
John wants him out of the way, waving, flashing his lights. Cullen not getting away that easily.
And this has worked.
Oh, Brock having to lock up everything to miss Cullen.
That was bad by Cullen. Brock should have been in, Cullen should have been out of the way. And Brock will be angry. Now Brock says, you must let me through.
Glenn Dix, the starter, gives the sign. They're on their last lap. Moffat falling back from it.
There'll be some desperate stuff braking for the S's, some closing through here, and that worked beautifully for Brock, and it should really have worked back there on the entry to the bowl. But that's where Moffat will have to nip quickly through the S's and try one there. Then the bowl is the last opportunity. But Brock, I think, has got the measure today. And he'll be very jubilant, because with Baigent allegedly running low in the team, a lot of pressure from sponsors, and it's still not over, this 5th round of the Australian Touring Car Championship. Peter Brock leading into the final corner from Alan Moffat. Running to the flag now, and the V8 should be good enough.
So close.
But Moffat pulled very nearly a miracle.
Brock placed, my goodness, they were side by side.
We're waiting the decision, quite frankly. Fury coming in 4th. Grice finished 3rd. Johnson should finish 5th. In car number 17 as Brock goes on his slowing down lap, and then lapped the Commodore 22.